Alright, Islam Makhachev has been missing since that incredible knockout of Alexander Volkanovski. Now, there's been a lot of speculation. What is his next fight? You know, he was supposed to fight Oliveira back in Abu Dhabi. Obviously, Oliveira had a pullout due to a nasty cut above his eye. But there's a lot of talk right now. Who is next for Islam Makhachev? And a lot of people are speculating, will he fight on that Saudi Arabia card? Will he fight at UFC 300? I'm going to predict right now what I think is next for Islam Makhachev. At the end of the video, I'm going to reveal some evidence as to why I think Islam is returning when he is. Before we get into it, I want to remind you guys to hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share. It really helps the channel, really helps the algorithm. You guys have been killing it with the support. Now, if you guys don't remember, which how could you forget, Islam Makhachev had a pretty good year with 2 wins over Alexander Volkanovski. The first one being very, very close, and I wouldn't say even controversial, although I think that Volkanovski won the fight. However, it was still very close. Like, honestly, it was probably decided by a round, and Volk could have easily won that fight. But then we get to October. Islam's supposed to fight Charles Oliveira in a big rematch, but Oliveira is forced to withdraw, and Volkanovski steps in on 10 days notice, and we all know what happened. The dude got head kicked, KO'd pretty badly in the first round. One of the best knockouts of the year. Now, after that, I expected him to make a semi-close turnaround. I mean, there were talks of even him fighting Charles Oliveira in Tirana. Obviously, that's not happening. Strickland is fighting Dricus Du Plessis, and we have the first 3 pay-per-views of the year booked, which is super unfortunate. Islam doesn't fight during Ramadan usually, so we have kind of a smaller window of time than we do for a normal fighter. So I would have rather maybe he gets the first pay-per-view slots if he's going to fight in Q1 of 2024. But we're going to get into maybe it is not a pay-per-view. Now, the way I see it, there is probably 3 options. The first being Charles Oliveira. Now, Charles Oliveira, like I said, was scheduled to fight Islam Makhachev, had a pullout. In that first fight, I maintain this. I think if you watch that fight, there's a lot of good takeaways for Oliveira going into the rematch. I made a video where I broke down the fight between Oliveira and Islam right before they were supposed to fight again. And I made a video breaking down the fight, and I showed you guys that if you guys actually pay attention, Islam Makhachev is rarely able to get past the guard of Charles Oliveira without being threatened by something, which is super important. The only times he was out of his guard was either the time that he got swept or the time that Oliveira easily got his guard back. And that's important because I think that is why Islam Makhachev did not go to the ground in that second round. If you notice, he didn't really attempt any takedowns because I think at some level Islam was uncomfortable with something that he saw on the ground, whatever it may be. Maybe it was the submission skills, maybe it was just the strength of Oliveira's guard. Look, you can see here Islam Makhachev trying to posture up, trying to pass the guard of Oliveira and immediately get into a triangle. That's the threat of Oliveira. Maybe it was some of those up kicks that Islam Makhachev was eating. Whatever it was, Islam Makhachev didn't like that game plan anymore, so kept it on the feet. So I think the question is, and I want to ask you guys, if this is Islam Makhachev's mindset, hey, I don't want to go on the ground again with this guy, who wins in a kickboxing fight? It's a genuine question. I mean, Islam Makhachev, you don't count that guy out either because he did knock down Oliveira in the last fight, so I'm not at all trying to say it's easy for Oliveira to even win a kickboxing match. However, I think in a pure striking match with no threat of the takedown, absolutely none whatsoever, I think Oliveira would most likely go forward and absolutely outvolume him, push him backwards, use that teep kick. However, there is the threat of the takedown, so even though this might be a stand-up fight, Oliveira might not know that. Oliveira might not get, hey, Islam might be threatened by me on the ground. And if that's so, he might not be so aggressive because we saw Oliveira go backwards in that fight with Islam, and that was kind of his fault. That is why he lost the fight, because Oliveira is so good going forward and he's so good with that pressure. And I feel like if Charles Oliveira is able to push forward against Islam Makhachev, I think the takedowns will be harder to get from Islam, and he might not even want to attempt them, and we could see potentially Charles Oliveira crack Islam or something like that. Now, I know it sounds crazy because I know a lot of people say, hey, Islam dominated that first fight. They say there's no chance for Charles Oliveira. I actually think that there's some good takeaways to take from that fight. I suggest you watch the video where I broke it all down. For me, as a Charles Oliveira fan, I'm not gonna lie, I want to see the rematch. I know that might not be a popular opinion because I know a lot of people are calling for other people, like second Justin Gaethje, right? Justin Gaethje is as deserving of his title shot as anyone else. With the wins over Rafael Fiziev, which admittedly that was kind of a close fight, but alone the head kick of Dustin Poirier, he deserves a title shot. Dustin Poirier was the #1 guy in the world at the time, or #2, I guess, because of Oliveira. And Justin Gaethje, I mean, let's talk about the pros and cons of this matchup. Like, what if this happens? I think it's a bit interesting because Gaethje has improved since that Khabib fight, because I think a lot of people are going to point to that and say, well, Khabib submitted him, Islam Makhachev is kind of like Khabib, so the same thing's going to happen. The thing about that is, I talked about this on the live stream recently, Khabib and Islam are very, very different grapplers. Khabib's grappling is a lot better than Islam. I mean, the way Khabib got that triangle on Justin Gaethje was absolutely insane, and to me, Islam just doesn't possess that finishing power on the ground that Khabib did, especially with ground and pound. And that being said, I mean, Islam also isn't as aggressive to get those takedowns, right? Where Khabib, let's be honest, was kind of shooting for his life against Gaethje because Khabib's legs were getting absolutely chomped up. Where Islam Makhachev is probably going to be a little more cool, calm, and composed, set up that takedown, which to be fair, Khabib did. It wasn't like he rushed a takedown. He did wait till the end of the first first round to shoot. But I'm just saying Islam Makhachev could afford to have this fight standing for at least a round, right? And not be in trouble. Especially being a southpaw, he might be tricky for Justin Gaethje. I think it's an interesting matchup, especially when you consider the good takedown defense of Justin Gaethje. I know it wasn't really on display against Khabib, but if it's a stand-up fight and, you know, Justin Gaethje could defend those takedowns, I'd probably favor Justin Gaethje. I think he could chop those legs up, and I think he could potentially take Islam to somewhere he hasn't been since that Volkanovski fight, maybe even a worse place if those legs are really battered. So I do think that's an interesting matchup, I'm not gonna lie, but I just think the Oliveira matchup is a little bit better. The guy was a former champion. He beat Gaethje, he beat Poirier. He was a great champion. I mean, honestly, you could put his reign up with Khabib, to be honest. And of course, he came back, knocked out Beneil Dariush in the first round, which I know might not be the most impressive win now that Arman Tsarukyan did it better, but I still think Oliveira deserves the title shot. But there is a third fight that could potentially happen. I think you guys have probably been wondering, what is this third fight? Well, I'm talking about welterweight champion Leon Edwards. Now I'm going to start speculating on the location where this event is going to take. A lot of people, like I said, are saying Saudi. A lot of people are saying UFC 300. A lot of people are saying, oh, it's going to take place later in the year. We're going to talk about that right now. Well, Leon Edwards, we know, is coming off of a win against Colby Covington. Not exactly the best performance from Leon Edwards, to be honest, right? Like, I think Leon should have been able to finish Colby. If I would have known Colby would have performed like that before the fight, I would have said, yeah, Leon's going to finish him. Of course, Leon did not finish him. He did brutalize his leg, though. Leon Edwards and Islam Makhachev, that is a fight that could potentially happen. I mean, Islam Makhachev has talked about going up to welterweight, but I will say so did Khabib. Khabib said many a times, hey, he's going to go up to welterweight, this and that. Never did, of course, and Islam, I feel, could be the same thing. I mean, Islam's a big lightweight. He could go to 170, and I'm not even saying that to diss him. He is a big lightweight. You can't deny it. And I think that matchup would be rather interesting, especially with the takedown defense of Leon Edwards, but I probably favor Leon in that matchup just because of the size, just because we saw Volkanovski do so well in that first fight without it being on short notice. But it is interesting if Islam Makhachev can get it on the ground, because we've seen Kamaru Usman have success against the fence. We saw Colby Covington in that last round have some success. So we'll see, but I think I'd probably pick Leon. I think he's got the advantages there, and he's taller, he's rangier. I think he'd probably get it done. But where is this event taking place? Now, the reason I said Leon Edwards is Leon Edwards, according to his coach, was tapped in and said, hey, could you fight at UFC 300?
Tim was given the message that they possibly want him back, I believe, is it March, April? In Vegas again, is it the 300?
Okay.
300.
Yeah.
I don't think a fight with Bilal warrants a spot on UFC 300 unless it's like a co-main event or a featured bout, to be honest. But UFC 300 main event, Leon Edwards versus Islam Makhachev, that would be a good main event. And it's totally possible both guys are free scheduling wise. But more than likely, my guess is Saudi Arabia. And why? Well, the big evidence I was teasing at the beginning of the video was a lot of people are ignoring the fact that Saudi Arabia allegedly paid $20 million for this UFC event. Do you guys really think that the UFC is going to bring on a regular fight night? Plus, Dana White even said himself that this card is not going to look like anything like a regular UFC fight night.
Can we expect like a title shot headlining?
It's a great question. It's the first time we've ever been to Saudi Arabia. Obviously, those guys operate at a very high level, and we will bring a not typical fight night to Saudi Arabia.
So I think UFC 300 is out, and if UFC 300 is out, I don't think Leon Edwards is fighting in Saudi Arabia. I think they'll just keep him for Bilal Muhammad. So then it comes down to Oliveira and Gaethje. Who is going to fight? We see Ali Abdelaziz talk about Gaethje. I don't know, honestly. It's 50-50. It's hard to tell because there's also rumors of Arman Tsarukyan versus Charles Oliveira. But honestly, my guess, or what I think it should be, is Charles Oliveira in Saudi Arabia against Islam Makhachev, and maybe we see Gaethje fight for the BMF title against Max Holloway. Or I think a matchup that makes more sense is Arman Tsarukyan versus Justin Gaethje. So then we get a #1 contender to fight in Abu Dhabi, and maybe we put that on a pay-per-view. Maybe they put that on the Saudi Arabia card too. Let me know what you guys think is next for Islam Makhachev. And if you're interested in a potential rematch between Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev, I suggest you guys click the video on the screen and check out where I broke down the fight, explaining how the rematch is actually closer than many people think. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.